Hello, welcome to the kick-off panel for National Hygiene Week 2021. I'm so pleased that you could all join us. Thank you very much. We've got an amazing panel here today. I'm going to look forward to talking to you. So National Hygiene Week 2020 was a great success, creating new conversations in new places. If the past year and a half has taught us anything, it's the importance of communities as a force for good. We witness this every day with our amazing network of volunteers around the country who are working hard to tackle hygiene poverty. This National Hygiene Week, we're asking communities around the UK to look up and tackle hygiene poverty. And we're asking that in three ways. The first one of which is to look up hygiene poverty on our website and to learn more about it and use the resources that we've got on the site, from panel discussions to educational resources to templates to write to your MP to tell them that you care about hygiene poverty. Secondly, is to look up to the hidden crisis. So we know that many people aren't aware of hygiene poverty. We support communities across the UK delivering personal care and household hygiene products, yet many people are unaware of this crisis. So we're asking you to look up in your local community and see how hygiene poverty might be affecting those in need. And thirdly, we're asking you to look up and help us tackle hygiene poverty. Taking action can be as simple as learning more about the issue, discussing it with your family, with your friends, classmates or work colleagues, or donating money or products to the Hygiene Bank, volunteering with your local Hygiene Bank project, or even starting a project in your own community. As I said, many people are unaware that hygiene poverty exists. We see National Hygiene Week as a great opportunity to spend a week raising awareness, discussing ways to tackle poverty, highlighting the role of communities and how integral volunteers are to supporting individuals and families in times of crisis. And we hope to elevate this hidden crisis by bringing together communities, businesses and thought leaders together to do something, whether that be volunteering, donating funds, products or raising awareness about hygiene poverty. So that's why we've put together this amazing panel of experts today to help us shine a light on poverty in the UK and inspire action. I'm Caroline Parr. I am a trustee at the Hygiene Bank. I'm also a freelance marketing consultant and I've been head of digital for the British Council and children's charity Action for Children. I'm going to ask the rest of the panel to introduce themselves now. Edgar, could I ask you to start?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Edgar Penollar, and I'm the CEO of the Hygiene Bank.
Thank you, Edgar. Emma, could I come to you next?
Sure, it's lovely to be here. I'm Emma Revie. I'm the Chief Executive of the Trussell Trust, and we support a network of 1,350 food bank centres across the UK, providing emergency food to people in crisis and campaigning for an end to the need for food banks.
Thank you, Emma. And Rosanne next, if that's okay.
Yeah, brilliant to be here with this fantastic panel. My name's Rosanne, as you said, and I'm the Chief Executive of In Kind Direct. And we believe at In Kind Direct that everyone deserves access to life's essentials and that absolutely no usable product should go to waste. And for the past 25 years, In Kind Direct has been working with a network of about 6,000 charities across the UK and manufacturers and retailers to get products out to those communities that need them most.
Wonderful, thank you, Rosanne. Lucy, can I come to you?
Good morning, everybody, and yes, thank you for inviting me here today, Edgar, Lucy and Caroline. I'm Communications Director for Boots, and the Hygiene Bank is one of our CSR partners. We've worked together for about 2 years. We've got over 400 hygiene banks across our stores in the UK, and we have a shared purpose to end hygiene poverty and to help families and people living in poverty in the UK. And to help them get access to those essential hygiene products.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to launch into the first question now. So before COVID-19, many were struggling already to make ends meet, whether that be the working poor, 0 hours contract workers, ethnic minority households, single parents, or those living with disabilities. Millions lacked the means to afford the basics. So now more than ever, we have this opportunity to tackle poverty by holding ourselves accountable for the inequalities that hold many people back from participating in society. So my question is, how can we hold ourselves more accountable to those swept into poverty and motivate others to do the same? And I wondered, Rosanne, whether you could kick us off with your thoughts on this.
Such a timely question. And I love that saying that talks about, you know, you need to walk a mile in someone else's shoes to really understand that person's situation. And, you know, I think when you think about walking in somebody else's shoes, you're able to think, you're able to feel how that person might be in that current situation. And for us in Kind Direct, we work, I mentioned that network of charities across the UK. We're always seeking to step into the shoes of those charities and the communities which they serve. And by doing that, we've always got to think about how we can listen to those charities and the needs of their communities and listen deeply. I think that's the first thing. If we're going to be held accountable to serve those that are experiencing poverty at this time, first thing is we just got to listen. And that takes ongoing conversations. We also, you know, regularly through our conversations, step back and do an impact survey. And I think that that's an important way to collectively hear those voices. And we found that in the last survey, 76% of our charitable network said we are focusing on keeping people clean, safe and well. And that's our absolute priority. So everything that we do in Kind Direct has to be driven by those insights and by that listening. And we need to be able to respond once we've listened. But I don't think that's enough. If we are really going to be able to motivate others, we've then also got to share the story. And I think what you're doing this week through National Hygiene Week is getting us to say, okay, we've got to look up, we've got to tell the story, we've got to communicate, and we've got to break this taboo. We've got to be able to get beneath this topic and make it a topic that we are able to talk about, because absolutely, as you said, Caroline, it's unseen often and it's untalked about. And so at In Kind Direct, we see a key role that we have to hold people accountable is to be talking to our incredible corporate partners that we work with, the manufacturers and retailers, so we can share the stories and we can make sure that those voices are heard and understood. And I think that I also know that, you know, we need to learn. And so being part of this conversation today with the Trussell Trust, with Hygiene Bank, I think there are ways we can be doing this better. We're always looking to think about how can we be doing this differently? How can we absolutely listen and understand the needs of those around us today? So I'm looking forward to any examples, thoughts and ideas so we can continue to evolve and meet those needs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true, that walking a mile in someone else's shoes and having that empathy, you know, when we're all busy, but just to look up and notice what's going on, because it's not something that people talk about, is it? Emma, Edgar, Lucy, do you have any other thoughts on how we could hold ourselves more accountable and motivate others to do the same?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks, Rosanne. I agree with your point around education and transparency. And one of the things I think we can do at Boots is use our platform to provide a voice for the people who we serve, and provide a voice for people who don't have the same platform that we do. So in terms of being accountable to those communities, that's something that we can do on their behalf. So by championing the Hygiene Bank and by getting involved in National Hygiene Week and talking about this issue very openly and honestly on our channels and to what is a very wide audience, I think that is something that we can do on behalf of those communities. And then the second thing is around providing access and accessibility. Boots as a brand, as you know, it's throughout the UK, we've got over 2,000 stores, but we are also a place for everybody, and we want to be a place for everybody. So providing somewhere where you can come to get advice or to get support or to get help, or a place that is a safe place, you know, that's really important for us. And that's why we're trying to roll out as many donation points as we can across the UK and involve our team members and educate our team members so that they are there to provide advice as well as support. so that no matter where you are, what community you live in, if you come into Boots, it is a safe place where you feel like you can get some support, and you're welcome, and we're standing there alongside you. So I think, those are two things that we can do in terms of that accountability.
Yeah, that's a really important message, because I suppose you wouldn't necessarily think of being able to go into a boot store for advice. So that's something that we'll take away from here and make sure that we spread the word on. Really important. And Emma, you look like you had something to add there. Forgive me if you didn't.
No, absolutely. I think just to say I absolutely agree with what Rosanne and Lucy have both said. I think it starts with focusing on working alongside and with people with lived experience of poverty. And I think for each of us here on this panel, it's important to recognise that that's not something we've done well in the past, and it's something we can do much, much better, but it's essential to the solution. We need to be harnessing that expertise that comes through lived experience, the power of really understanding what's going on. And for us at Trussell, we, as part of our strategic process that we've been through in the last 3 years, we recognise that wasn't something that we'd necessarily done very well before. We quite often talk about providing services, but actually not listening and understanding what's really needed and transferring that power. We have a real opportunity to transfer power in our communities and to work alongside and with people. And our participation framework now recognises that the golden thread through all of our work going forward has to be people with lived experience driving what we do together as an organisation. And I think, to pick up again on what Rosanne had said as well, the other really important thing we can do is recognise and investigate what's actually going on, what's the reality of what's going on. And for us 3 years ago, we decided we would commission some external independent research into the state of hunger in the UK. So what's really driving the numbers of people we've been seeing in food banks? What's going on there? What are the reasons why people are coming to food banks? And then use that as the basis for developing our strategy, which we did together with our food banks and with people who have accessed the services of our food banks and who have lived experience of poverty. And that takes time to do that, but recognising and speaking truth to power about what we're actually seeing, what is the evidence showing us of what is actually happening, and then working alongside and with people who are experiencing poverty to craft those solutions is really important. So just really restating what we've already said, but I think it's amazing. This is our first question today, so thank you for that. It's a great question.
No, and thank you all for your answers. I think at the Hygiene Bank, we feel it's so important to stand side by side with people swept into poverty. So couldn't agree more with anything with what you've all said. Edgar, just give you an opportunity to add anything from the Hygiene Bank perspective as well here before we move on.
Thank you, Caroline. And I echo what everyone else has already said. And, I know everyone on the panel, it's, and the key message I probably want to get to, on top of the whole thing about education, is collaboration. And I think it's that future action that we need to take. So not just the charities, we've got a panel tomorrow, which is charities and brands, which I facilitate. And it's trying to understand that we can all do something. It's that taking that next step, taking the action to try and address the issues that we're faced with. The education piece, what we would ask everyone to do is start that conversation with your friends, with your family, in your local communities. On our website for National Hygiene Week, we've got MP letters that you can download. So start to have the conversation with your local MP so that we understand what needs to take place to address hygiene poverty. So raising awareness, education, and collaboration is the messages from me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I'm actually going to direct my next question to you, Edgar, if that's okay. So Lizzie Hall founded the Hygiene Bank in 2018 after learning about hygiene poverty and seeing the injustice that many in the UK simply couldn't afford to keep clean. And since then, the Hygiene Bank has distributed over 640,000 kilograms of product. Can't even imagine how big that is. And they've delivered those essentials to over 2,000 registered community partners such as schools, food banks, women's refuges. And this couldn't have happened without our absolutely incredible network of over 460 volunteers who between them have set up 150 local projects across the UK. And so, Edgar, having seen a movement grow this quickly in so many communities, why do you believe that these individuals choose to look up and tackle hygiene poverty in their local community?
One of the things you said earlier, Caroline, was about empathy. I think people in our communities feel they can take an action and make a difference, a positive difference in other people's lives. I think with the pandemic, what we did see was communities come together, neighbors who have lived next door to each other for years, not knowing each other. And with the pandemic, actually going, I'm going to buy food for you. I'm going to collect your medication. And we turned around and we went to look out for each other. You're absolutely right about our volunteers. Our volunteers have seen that. They've seen that they can do something for their local community. And they're fantastic. The amount of effort they put in, day out, to collect those products. And we were making sure that they kept safe. They followed the government guidelines during the pandemic. But they rose to the challenge. And I cannot say enough how great they were in terms of what they did during the pandemic. The other thing that we'd probably say is that, after the pandemic, there's more that's going to happen. So we need to be prepared. So I think it's a plea to everyone watching. I said it before, have the conversation because we need to be prepared for what comes next. And I think the more prepared we are, the better we are.
Absolutely. And I think I saw some research, I think it was from NICE, saying that the pandemic had resulted in people feeling more connected to their local communities, which can only be a good thing, can't it? But the work doesn't stop there. We need to make sure that the lessons we've learned during the pandemic continue, I think. And can see Emma nodding. Emma, Rosanne, Lucy, feel free to add something if you have any thoughts on this issue as well. But don't worry, if not, can move on.
It really resonated what Edgar was saying about volunteers. And so our volunteers tell us time and time again, the thing that motivates them the most is compassion. But actually what we've seen even more so over the last year is this rising sense of a call for justice as well, that's held in tension with that desire to support our neighbours, but actually a recognition that this is not right. It's not right that people are falling through the safety net of our country. It's not right that our neighbours can't afford food or personal hygiene items. And so this is now a moment, I think, for us to really hold on to those questions, hold on to the incredible ways we change the ways we work and we live to protect one another. Hold on to that and say, okay, what is a just settlement going forward that allows us to continue to protect one another? People were needing hygiene items before the pandemic. People were coming to emergency food parcels for many years before the pandemic. This is not a new thing, but it is a new opportunity to call for a just response, to ensure that this doesn't continue going forward, and that we hold on to all of that good stuff we've learned about ourselves and our communities during the pandemic, I think.
Yes, well said. Lucy, I'm going to come to you now, if that's okay. So our vision at the Hygiene Bank is that one day everyone in the UK will have access to essential hygiene products, as you know. And since February 2020, we've been working with Boots UK colleagues and customers to help support this vision. And I'm going to just give the people watching a bit of a snapshot as to some of the things that we've achieved with Boots just in the last year. So as Lucy said earlier, Boots have over 400 donation points for the Hygiene Bank in stores nationally. Boots have donated over 620,000 kilograms of hygiene products in the past year. And Boots brand committed in February that if you donate, they'll donate. So for every kilogram, which is about a bag of sugar, isn't it, donated to the Hygiene Bank by customers in a Boots store, Boots will donate 4 products. So that really only scratches the surface, doesn't it, Lucy, in terms of what we've accomplished in such a short amount of time. But I was wondering if you could tell us more about why Boots have chosen to partner with the Hygiene Bank and how Boots is supporting National Hygiene Week this year.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Caroline. And a big thank you to everybody at the Hygiene Bank and also to everybody at Boots who's been involved in making all of that happen. As Edgar said, it's about collaboration and partnership, and it's taken a lot of people, a lot of time, lots of it in their spare time to get all that stuff action. So thank you to everybody who's watching today, who's played a massive part in that. And yes, actually, the relationship between Boots and the Hygiene Bank is a very natural one. It was an easy decision for us to get involved and to support the Hygiene Bank because it really is a cause that has been right at the heart of Boots since our inception over 170 years ago. We have a very strong sense of purpose as a brand, as an organisation, and our team members live and breathe that sense of purpose every day. And our founder, Jesse Boot, when he started the company, and many of you will have heard me say this before, but he did so with a principle that everybody should have access to soap and a sponge, no matter what their background is. And that's a value that really sits at the heart of our organisation today. And, you know, we use that value and we use that sense of purpose to help us make all kinds of decisions across our business. Actually, you know, everything from trying to keep as many shops open as we could during the pandemic to deciding to partner with the Hygiene Bank. We absolutely feel that we have a responsibility to do our bit to try and help with the levelling up agenda and to play our part in reaching communities up and down the UK. And as you say, to work together with the Hygiene Bank and other partners to really elevate the issue of hygiene poverty, but to also try and provide a solution to that, both in the short term and in the long term as well. So yes, we've been absolutely delighted to partner with you and to do lots of those things. It's been great to put the Hygiene Banks in our stores. It's been really great for our team members actually to be able to play a part in having an impact locally in their local communities. We are a community organisation, and for many people, their local pharmacy or their local Boots store, they've visited for the whole of their life. It's somewhere they can go to get advice, somewhere they know the pharmacists, they know the people that work there. So it's been brilliant for us to be able to support local communities as well as support on a national level as well. And, you know, I'd just also like to take this opportunity, being National Hygiene Week, to say a huge thank you to Unilever, who are partnering with Boots and with the Hygiene Bank this week on a campaign to donate more products. So in terms of a Unilever are going to donate products, 1 product for every product that's donated into the Hygiene Bank during this week as well. So as Edgar said earlier, you know, the more people we can get to collaborate with us, and if as Boots we can use our role to galvanise more support from our partners and our suppliers, then we will continue to do that. So hopefully that answers your question, Caroline. But yes, you know, a very kind of natural relationship. I think we definitely have a shared vision and a shared sense of purpose.
It does indeed, Lucy. Thank you so much. I didn't know the story about the Boots founder, so that was really interesting. And I think, yeah, your network of stores and the relationships that you have in local communities really echo ours. And we're very grateful for everything that you and as you mentioned rightly, Unilever are doing to support us. Thank you so much. Edgar, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to come in here as well, if you wanted, from a Hygiene Bank perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. the Hygiene Bank are so grateful to Boots, from being introduced to Boots when Lizzie won the Woman of the Year award back in 2019. That opened up the door, and the relationship since February 2020 has been amazing. With the pandemic, Boots stepped up in a big way to help support us, because our operating model was public drop-off bins, but with the lockdown, those closed. The local shops, the leisure centres closed, but Boots continued to operate. And at that time, we only had 25 stores, and it increased to over 300 stores, and now we're over 400, which is just amazing. And in terms of the products that they've donated to us in Christmas last year, they made a center of their Christmas campaign with a song and with a video, and that was just fabulous. So thanks again to Boots for their support.
Brilliant, thank you all. So I'm going to kind of look up at the moment, and we're just going to think about the bigger picture now as I come to Emma. So Emma, in the last 5 years, the Trussell Trust network has increased by 128%. And we know that over 40% of the community partners that we serve are food banks alone. And like the Hygiene Bank, the Trussell's Trust measure of success is to no longer exist. So with that in mind, how do you think we can build a fairer society where everyone has access to the basics?
Thanks. It's a great question. Just to clarify, so our network hasn't really grown in the last few years, but we've seen demand for food parcels increase by 128%. Last year, we distributed 2.5 million emergency food parcels to people in crisis, and just under 1 million of those were to children. So I always describe it as the footprint hasn't got bigger, it's just got much deeper in terms of the need that we're seeing in people in communities across the country. And so I think in terms of how do we build a fair society where everyone has enough to afford the essentials, I think it starts with what I was mentioning a moment ago, that we need to recognise and investigate what's actually taking place here. And so our State of Hunger report has given us some real insight into what drives people to needing to come to a food bank. And it's important to say it's not about a lack of access to food or hygiene items. These are symptoms of the problem, that people can't get food and hygiene items. What's driving people to need food banks is not having enough money. So extremely low levels of income, which means they're unable to afford food and hygiene items. And what our State of Hunger research told us was that the average household income of somebody coming to a food bank was just £50 a week after rent to cover all other costs, which is 5 times lower than the poverty line as set by the Social Metrics Commission. And in fact, we know from the research we did with Heriot-Watt University that 95% of people coming to food banks are actually experiencing destitution, which means they're unable to afford essentials such as hygiene items, food, accommodation, utilities, and essential clothing. So when we look through our respective windows, in our case, providing emergency food, in Hygiene Bank's case, personal hygiene items, we're just seeing a snapshot of a much bigger problem, which is around extreme poverty and destitution. And we also know what's driving that extremely low level of income for people. And directly and primarily, it's about low levels of social security. So when we become unwell or are unable to work, we look to our social security system to hold us during that period of time. And more often or not, through design, the system is not catching everybody. So whether that's through the level of payments or a built-in 5-week wait at the outset before one receives one's first universal credit payment, or caps on eligibility, it's leaving too many people unable to afford the essentials. Just an example of that from our research in this last year, we know that almost 1 in 5 households referred to food bank during the pandemic were a lone parent household, which is twice the rate in the general population. And we also know that numbers of larger families needing to turn to food banks has increased by 36% since 2018, which means that there's particular policies such as the 2-child limit or the benefit cap that are causing real hardship for families and causing them to be overrepresented in the number of people coming to food banks. There's also indirect drivers in terms of ill health. A high number of people coming to food banks are experiencing ill health or have a disability, and also difficult life circumstances such as being evicted or a lack of local support, being there to support somebody if they're experiencing domestic violence. So we know what's happening, and we know what we need to tackle and what we need to investigate further. So I would say that in answer to the question about how do we build a fairer society where everyone has access to the basics, we need governments at all levels, local, national, UK, to create a plan to end the need for food banks. This needs to include, firstly, ensuring that people get enough money from the social security system to hold them out of destitution, and having a cash first approach, not product, not food, but ensuring people have enough money to weather those crises. And a starter for 10 would be keeping that £20 uplift that we received during the pandemic to universal credit, not taking that away in September, which is currently the plan. Secondly, we need to ensure that local lifelines are available to get people the right support at the right time. Too often, short-term crises turn into long-term hardship because we don't have the right support there. So a breakdown in a relationship or a period of ill health, we need to ensure that that doesn't turn into long-term hardship by investing in cash-based grants that are available for people at that point of need and during an emergency particularly. And finally, we need these plans that are about ending the need for food banks, tackling destitution, to be made with and alongside people with lived experience of poverty. And those frontline community organisations like food banks, like hygiene banks, that know what's going on and what the issues are in their communities. And we need to develop together that plan that reaches out to all communities, whether that be the business sector, us as individual members of society, charities, and working together with the government to end the need for food banks. It can be done, and we need to have that zealous focus on not just accepting as normal the mass distribution of food aid and hygiene items, but actually tackling those underlying issues.
Gosh, Emma, thank you. That was incredibly powerful and moving as well. I mean, some of those stats, they just make you so angry, don't they? But thank you. I think one of the things that really jumped out to me there was about preventing short-term crises turning into long-term hardship. I think that's, so many people, we hear ourselves, our founder, Lizzie Hall, talks about people being 3 paychecks away from, being swept into poverty if you're suddenly made redundant, or it could happen to any of us, couldn't it? And I think we need to empathise and remember that. Thank you very much. Rosanne, I wanted to give you an opportunity to come in here because I know that you see similar things in your work. Do you have a view?
Emma, just giving us the landscape of the reality of the system that holds people in that destitution is so the work that you've done and the recent report you have on hunger is so helpful for organisations like In Kind Direct, because I think what you've done at the Trussell Trust has been able to really highlight some of those key changes that we want to see happening. And as you talked about those partnerships between governance, between corporates, between local communities, the different voices that we need to bring together. And I'm really conscious that at In Kind Direct, we are part of that ecosystem of change. And our approach to enabling communities to thrive, which is what we're so desperate to see happening, and that's our passion. Part of that solution are products that meet an immediate need, but they're not the full solution at all. In the same way as you talk about, Emma, the food banks, we know that we're part of creating longer term change. But what we are seeing through our listening and through engaging with the communities is how important that need, is needed more than ever at the moment. With our, like you found, Emma, we're seeing now that we've increased the number of people that we're able to support every week. We're up to about 250,000 people, and that's even increased from last year. Coming into 2021, my hope was that we were not going to continue in this period of particular, crisis, but we're still here. And for all the examples you gave, Emma, We know that we're seeing people on furlough and the challenges that are being faced there with, particular economic difficulties, and that's impacting more people, particularly families, larger families. We're seeing the same happening, and we know that the key products that people are needing, and we always talk about toilet rolls. For many people, there's a purchase that isn't even thought about, but toilet rolls, shampoo, conditioner, we're thinking about toothpaste, deodorants. We've got a basket of those essentials. And last week when I was out talking and spending time with some of our communities we work with, hearing the hard choices that people are making as parents between whether they can go and afford to pay for shampoo for their family or whether they're putting food on the table. Those are choices that we don't want anybody to be making. And that's where we know that behind that product, even though it's not the answer, when we talk to people, they're saying this product isn't a product. It's giving me my dignity or self-esteem. It's providing me with confidence. It's enabling me to get out there and access work, or it's enabling me to go out there, making sure my kids are going to school feeling confident that they are walking into an environment with clean clothes, with clean teeth, and able to start their day in a different way. So that feedback that we're hearing enables us to go out and find those products. And, we do know that at the moment that support is needed more than ever.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rosanne. Again, very, very powerful and absolutely right. Edgar, Lucy, just before we move on, did you have anything that you wanted to say on this topic?
So what I did want to say was that, Em and I have spoken about this, and it is that working together. I come back to it because, we want, success for us is that we do not exist. So it's trying to find that solution. And it's a conversation that needs to start, and it needs to start now. And through organizations like the Trussell Trust, like In Kind Direct, like the Joseph Reed Roundtree Foundation, just coming together, working out what is that next step. So Emma talked about the £20 uplift. Absolutely, we need to think about that and see what happens and put pressure on government to try and address that issue. Lots of things that we need to do, and I come back to collaboration is the key for us.
Absolutely. And for anybody watching, Emma mentioned the State of Hunger report, and if you want to find out more about this issue, I'd really encourage you to look at that. I think I'm right in saying it's on your website, Emma, but we can link to it. But a hugely powerful piece of research. Right, we are going to move on now. Thank you very much for all your answers to those questions. So, Rosanne, this is a question for you, if that's okay. So, research by In Kind Direct has shown that almost 2/3 of your network of charities have been distributing toiletries, household supplies, nappies, and period products, which highlights for us that many people can't afford those essentials. And we know that our projects have been purchasing many of those products to support our community partners, and we're very grateful to be able to afford to access those affordable essentials, which are often quite costly. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about the demand for, you mentioned it a little bit just now, but could you tell us more about the demand for personal care and household hygiene products, and how not being able to afford to keep clean is affecting the communities that your charities support?
Yeah, and I think that builds off the need to be able to listen to what's actually happening. And a couple of weeks ago we pulled together our recent survey of the 6,000 charities that we work with, and what we're able to then capture is a real sense across the whole UK of where where the needs sit at this time in 2021. And that then drives our ability to go out and talk to corporate partners like Unilever or Procter & Gamble or the Amazons or L'Oreal's of this world and say, this is the need in the community. So we're not able to go out and purchase your products in the way that other consumers can, but it's just going to have incredible impact. And with that in mind, we seeing at the moment that, as I was saying earlier, there's there's still the need for those essential items. It's interesting, as we come into the summer period, we're going into a time now where children are not going to be at school. School meals, as we know, are not able to be provided in the same way. Families are going to have greater requirements to be, keeping their families clean and well as they go out and play, and they're, involved in summer activities, out in the garden or out in the streets or out in the, parks nearby now playing. And therefore, we're seeing that cleanliness remains an absolute constant. But when we talk about essentials, it's really interesting for us seeing what is essential and for what time. That we're seeing there's a need for toys, games, and as people have been isolating in the last period, some of the requirements to keep people occupied in a different way. So although of course hygiene poverty is absolutely core, we're seeing a few other key elements that have come in, particularly during the last few months and as we look to the summer period. But when we think about what each of those products enable our communities to do differently, is that we're actually enabling people to live a life. I think you used the words justice, Emma. I think we talked about, people who, we don't want people to be in destitution. How can you live a life where you're thriving? And that's really what these products are part of, a much wider solution to be able to help people to thrive in the best possible way. And that's what the information we're hearing from our network of charities is helping us to focus on as we look into the summer months.
Yeah, thank you, Rosanne. That's such a powerful message, isn't it, that we want people to thrive. Emma or Edgar, Lucy, any other thoughts on that before we move on? Lucy?
Yeah, I was just going to add, Rosanne, Emma and Edgar all mentioned in the last couple of questions the research and the reports they're producing. For a partner like Boots, that's really, really important that we hear that insight and we listen to your expertise, because we want to help, but we want to help in the right way. We want to help in a way that's going to have impact. So the work that you do, listening on our behalf to communities and talking to people and really getting to the root of the causes of hygiene poverty in particular, that's really important work, and it means that we can respond in the right way that's going to have the biggest impact. So yes, that's what would add to that question, and thank you for continuing to do that.
Brilliant. Yes, well said. I've got one more question left for the panel, but I just wanted to take the moment to say, if anybody's watching online and you have questions for the panel, just write them below and we'll do our best to get to some of them once we've finished. Brilliant. So a key outcome for the Hygiene Bank is recognition among citizens and government that hygiene poverty is unjust, and we've talked about that, and Rosanne and Emma have mentioned that. And of course we want that outcome for all forms of poverty, not just hygiene poverty. An indicator of whether we've accomplished this is evidence of shifting perceptions about what it is like not to afford the basics. And we know that many of those swept into poverty work several jobs, they're single parents and likely to be supporting someone who's disabled at home. And due to the pandemic, as Rosanne mentioned, they've experienced job losses, reduction in hours, potentially bereavement, illness and more. So they've been pulled into poverty, not due to choices, but unavoidable life events. So I wanted to ask how organisations can shift perceptions about the causes of poverty and the individuals experiencing hardship. And I wondered, Emma, if I could come to you first on that point, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Changing minds is hard. I think that's what I'd say up front. It's so critical, though, to seek to shift perception, and it's because of that it's one of we've got 3 strands to our strategy: changing communities, changing policy and changing minds, because shifting perceptions is going to be vital if we really want to see an end to destitution, end to the need for food banks or hygiene banks. And so it's something we're actively engaged in, but it's really difficult. And so there's a few reflections I could share around this, but we're still working this out ourselves as an organisation. So first thing is we know that language really matters. and we know how we frame a conversation is really key. And so even actually just how you framed this question to me, Caroline, is great, because what we're asking about is, instead of telling the most telling a story and putting up a figure of somebody to look at that would exemplify all the positive attributes we would think need to be shown of somebody in order to solicit a response from the general public. Instead of that, we need to be talking much more about systems. It's not about, we all make choices as members of society, good, bad, questionable, fantastic, altruistic, not, but actually reframing the conversation around poverty around systemic injustice, understanding how the system's forcing people into poverty is a really big part of that, changing the narrative. We too often are suckered into conversations about individuals and not enough about the systems, because it distracts us from talking about the systems, which is much more difficult to address, but so crucial. And it's what is causing, when we know that you're 3 times more likely to be in a food bank if you have a disability than you are within the general population. There's something systemically failing there that is driving people with disabilities into destitution, and so we need to call into question what's going on with the system. But it's a hard conversation. One example I have is we know that the vast majority from surveying we've done through YouGov, we know that most people in the UK think it isn't right that somebody has to come to a food bank. But we also know that a large number of them feel that it can't change. There's a certain inevitability to the fact that people come into food banks. But we also know that 10 years ago, we only distributed 60,000 food parcels. Last year, 2.5 million. This is a new thing. Decisions have been made that have caused more people to be forced into poverty. Those decisions can change. And so it's really important within our language, in terms of framing the situation, is that we talk about how things can change, that this can change, and to demonstrate where change is taking place. I would say, secondly, that lived experience really does matter, and not just because it's right, quite frankly, that people should voice their own experiences rather than have someone else tell their story or speak for them, but it can also be incredibly powerful in terms of understanding what's really going on and where change can really happen. But thirdly, and I think really critically when we think about the work of kind of food banks alongside hygiene banks, we need to link it to our local communities. Destitution isn't something that's abstract or happening to people over there somewhere else. It's happening in our communities, it's happening to our neighbours. And we need to connect that reality with the post bags of our MPs and with our other elected officials. So as Edgar was saying, there's template letters. We need to be talking about this to the people who we have elected to have some power to do something about it. And we need to speak out and say, not in our town, not in our village, not in our borough. We ask our representatives to end this thing because it can change. So I think, yeah, I come back round to, it's hard to change minds, but we won't end destitution, and we won't end food banks or hygiene banks without it.
Thank you. Yeah, you answered my question, actually, because I was going to ask you about that mix of the systematic injustices that you were talking about, and that how the lived experience lays over the top of that. So that was great that you covered that. Thank you. And I think that point about demonstrating that things can change, because it can feel quite hopeless, can't it? Because it's such a big problem. But all of the organisations on the call today are doing things to help, and things can change if we all work together, as Edgar has pointed out, I think. So that was brilliant. I wanted to give anybody else on this panel a chance to come in on that. Does anybody else have any other views, or I can go to the questions from the audience? Edgar, I'll come to you.
Thank you. I mean, it's so powerful, the messages that Emma's delivered just there. Like the Trussell Trust, the Hygiene Bank has really focused on careful framing of our communications and our language. But one of the things that I would also add is that we need to try and avoid further stigmatizing negative public perceptions about why people find themselves being swept into poverty. And I think Caroline mentioned it earlier on, it can just take one event, like a bereavement, that can drive someone into poverty. And it's not that they don't want to work, or that's not the issue. There is probably something else underlying. Just picking up on the systems point that Emma had raised as well, if we stop and think about the poverty stats, in 2010, there were 3.6 million children living below the poverty line. In 2020, that's 4.3 million. What sort of society, I think, do we want? Does that sound right? Does that feel right? And to me, it doesn't. There must be something that we need to do. And this focus on writing to your MP, working within your local communities, standing side by side along those people in crisis, those people who are being held back because of hygiene poverty, is part of that process. So, it's a plea to everyone listening. Look up hygiene poverty, learn about the issues that exist in your community and across the UK, and take action. That's the plea to everyone watching.
Absolutely. And that leads me on very nicely to the question that we've had from someone watching. So we need to create a framework which creates pressure for change. Edgar mentioned the opportunity for collaboration. So this person wonders whether the organisations on the call today would be open to coming together along with other like-minded organisations in order to write an open letter or pledge to do more or put pressure on the government so everyone has access to the basic essentials. What do you think? I know it's something that the Hygiene Bank is a relatively young charity and relatively new to kind of public policy work. But Emma, Rosanne, I think you have more experience. Do you have a view?
I'll come in, and Emma, please do add it. I think it's been really incredible, particularly through the last 18 months, seeing how those of us who are charities have really come together, echoing what you say, Edgar, around collaboration. One of the biggest privileges, I think, in my role has been the opportunity to connect with organisations like Trussell Trust. We have a product giving alliance where we work very closely with Fair Share, with international health partners and Charity Digital. And we've been able to, through those opportunities, find ways to create a louder voice for change. And that has also been part of a wider charity group, a charity sector group. When we think about the whole sector at the moment that is there to support, where there is this safety net, which is often lacking, we know that there's a real lack of funding. We've had those figures about needing 12 billion to keep the sector going. And we have been talking collectively to government to say, we need your support to help this sector while we build the longer term solutions which are so needed for change. So I think that, yes, there are already some brilliant conversations, groups that are already happening. And the lovely thing, I think, that hopefully people who are listening today can see that ourselves working very closely with Hygiene Bank, connecting with Trussell Trust and others, we want to draw on each other's strengths. We're all here to see change happen, and we all have our unique ways of doing that. And I think hopefully organisations like Boots, they can draw on that experience that we bring to be able to see that as corporates, there are those out there that we are working collaboratively to make change happen.
Absolutely, it's about collaboration, isn't it, and working together. So I don't believe there are any other questions, so I'm going to draw this panel to a close. I just want to say a huge thank you to each of you, to Emma, Rosanne, Lucy, Edgar, for joining me and making it very easy to facilitate. I wanted to thank everyone who's watching, and I hope that you've been moved and inspired by the conversation that's taken place today. I know I have. Please look up in your community and help us tackle hygiene poverty. You can visit thehygienebank.com /National Hygiene Week, or follow us on social media for ways to get involved. There is a Just Giving link beneath us as well. If you were moved enough to donate, we'd be very grateful, and we'll use it to help people struggling with hygiene poverty. I wanted to give Emma, Rosanne, Lucy, Edgar a chance to say a final thank you and goodbye. Edgar, can I come to you first?
Thank you, Caroline. The key message from me is look up hygiene poverty. Have that conversation with family and friends. Understand the issues that we're faced and take action.
Thank you, Edgar. Lucy, could I come to you next? Is there anything that you wanted to say just in conclusion?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. And just to echo Edgar, one of the reasons I think we've all taken part in the panel today is to continue that communication around hygiene poverty and to escalate the issue and to shine a light on it. So I hope that everybody who's watched has found it interesting. And if you'd like to learn more, I think Caroline has spelled out where you can go. But thank you very much for listening, and great to hear from the other partners on the panel today.
Yeah, and thank you to everything that Boots have done with the Hygiene Bank. We're very grateful. Rosanne, can I come to you next?
I think we all share that desire that everyone should have, life's essentials, and that no usable products should go to waste. And so when I think about, being able to step into somebody else's shoes, I would just encourage each of us to walk alongside others, to take time to understand people in our community. And, this is a time, as you said, Emma, we don't want to go back into old ways. This is not a new problem, but we can find new solutions. And I think that this panel has really helped me and encouraged me as I hear from Edgar and from Emma and Lucy about new ways and new thought processes of how we can be doing that even better and even more effectively. So thanks for this opportunity, and we'll definitely be focused this week on looking up and shouting as loudly as possible about a taboo subject which needs to be heard about, because it's very real for so many people in our communities. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rosanne. And yeah, it's nice that we've come full circle, isn't it? And to think about walking a mile in someone else's shoes. Emma, would you like any final words?
Just say thank you so much, Caroline and Edgar, for having me on the panel today. It's been great hearing from everybody on this really important subject of everyone being able to afford the essentials. And I think my last thought would be, what would we want for ourselves or for our loved ones? And so when we're thinking about what's a dignified response, we want the people we love the most to be able to afford the essentials in life. And we've seen that we can make incredible changes during the pandemic, to government stepping in with our furlough scheme, to us changing the way we live and we work. There is hope. Tremendous change can happen, but we must keep focused on how we uphold everyone's dignity and what we would want for ourselves and our loved ones, and look up and see how that can be achieved. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Emma. Eloquent as always. And I'll leave everyone who's watching with that thought. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.